which means it's time for Wow Ergonomics with myself, looking quite dapper today, I do feel.
Very dapper.
Graham Cove. And you, Stephen Howe, looking
less
like
dapper.
Well, just like normal.
Is that good? Is that bad? Who knows?
I think it's absolutely fine.
Yeah.
Do I see a reduction in the number of bottles there, or have they just grouped themselves better in the background?
No, actually, I have to be honest. It's one of those floating shelves, you get from a Swedish furniture store. And I didn't notice last week it was sagging and it was leaning forward. So anyway, last weekend I took it off and reset it. Hence why it probably looks a little bit better. It was like in danger of everything sort of falling forward. So that's the hang on that way. That's the adjustment to the prime shelf behind me.
Well, I'll tell you the reason for the shirt and tie today was that we actually had a comment as we prefaced this show from the amazing Mr. Guy Osmond, and he said, "Are you going to wear a shirt and tie?" And I said, "If I have to, yes, I will." You said, "I don't know whether I've even got one."
I'm not sure I have.
So I've made sure, if you're watching, Guy, shirt, tie, but also to keep it real, tutu as well. So there we go. I hope you appreciate that, Mr. Osmond, because you can't judge a book by its cover these days.
No. I see the abuse.
Looking very professional, Mr. Cove, and then I've actually completely ruined it. There we are.
Yeah. And then he abuses me by saying not you. So,
well, how very, very rude. Anyway, I
just spoke to him half an hour ago. He did say join the show, and he was true to his word. So there we go.
Well, this is the show, as you know, for anything to do with ergonomics, wellness, office culture, and we have a very special announcement stroke guest this morning.
We do.
So let me make all of that disappear, and let's introduce our guest today, Mr. Ben Caton. Here he is. Hello, Ben.
How are we doing?
Hello.
We're good.
Thanks for having me on. I'm loving the tie. It's a very, very nice one, Graham. But Steve, I love a hoodie as well, so don't worry.
It is my standard. In fact, do you remember that, Graham? About 2 years ago when we started the show, we did try and get Superdry to sponsor us, and we were by constantly wearing their gear. But funny enough, we never heard back from them. So
surprised that, isn't it?
It's. I don't think we fell into their demographic, really. I mean,
you're too old. Is that just the problem?
Absolutely, yeah. Okay. I think once we get to a certain age, then it just falls off. Ben, do introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about yourself, and tell us, if people haven't already picked it up on the social media platforms this morning, your little bit of news.
Thanks for having me on. So my name is Ben Caton. So I will give you the short version because the long version would be 5 hours, even if Hollywood got hold of it. So we haven't got time. But so Ben Caton, I'm the founder of a couple of different businesses, a small chain of performance gyms, and also a health and wellbeing app for employees, which I'm sad to, lucky to say sort of goes everywhere now, looks after a lot of people. But the amazing news, which I am super, super pleased to share with everybody, is I'm pleased to say I'm the managing director of Ergo Chair Limited, hence the backdrop. I haven't just gone out and bought 17 chairs and filled my spare room with them for the sake of it. There's a reason.
Well, you wouldn't necessarily have chosen those colours, would you?
No, I wouldn't have. I do like a funky colour. I've gone blue today because it's a Friday. It's just that day. But I love a funky colour. My first ever job was actually in a tailor's. I was a tailor's apprentice for a couple of years. So I can still chalk a suit pattern today if I needed to. And it was a terrible wage, but we got paid in tokens. So I ended up buying ties, cufflinks, suits, and all manner of nonsense, which I don't wear anymore, but I love it.
So you must have really enjoyed it when you were pursuing this as a potential option, when you got to visit the factory there and you actually could see the tailoring that happens there. Because let's make this clear, that doesn't happen everywhere.
No, it doesn't. And that was one of the things that really attracted me to it. So, my most recent life, shall we say, is running a company called Wellmi, which is a technology app. And the technology industry and the UK manufacturing sector don't share a huge amount of space, all right? There may be not obvious bedfellows, but walking onto the Ergo Chair site in Yate, it's the craftsmanship that brought me in. I mean, we have people here that are not only skilled and passionate, but I mean, they've been here longer than I've been around some of them. I hate to say it, and that's not a judgment on age, because age isn't it, but they are skilled craftspeople. And what fascinated me was that intersection between a real personal product. This is something that's designed to change someone's life in one way or another, and the fact that actually it's made with a combination of technological manufacturing and somebody there with a sewing machine, somebody there with a piece of chalk, a guy with a leather punch and a hammer. I mean, that fascinated me. That was how they got me. That was how they bit me in.
I don't know whether, have you ever been to the factory there, Stephen?
No. It's been promised many occasions by Nick Arnold, but he's never fulfilled on that promise. So I'm sure Ben will be more reliable than Nick. Thank you, Ben. That'd be great.
I'll get you down. You'll be walking out in an ergo chair hoodie as well.
Oh, perfect. When Tuesday?
Yeah, let's do it. Yeah.
Okay, let's do it.
There you go. But the last time I went there, I took some photos because there was one station there where someone's got all of these little marks on a board of all of the, kind of working towards perfection. And I love all of that. I love the fact that people passionately care there about what they're putting into the product. And I don't think you see that in too many businesses.
No, definitely not. You don't, not just businesses, but in every walk of life now. I mean, that level, that intricate level of detail and care and attention, sadly, is lost to an extent. In some things, it has to be. But isn't it great that we've still got it here? And that's kind of part of the mission now for me, is to take what we do on that level, that personality, and show it to more people. Let the world kind of see what we do, not just us here, but as an industry as a whole. There's so many good stories, and they're just not being told enough.
Yeah, absolutely. How do you feel that you're going to bring your two worlds together, if you like, and push this company forward? Because I think that needs to happen within the industry. I think, we do need to understand the way that technology is moving our lives forward. And you've obviously got a handle on that with the things that you've done before. How does that now play out in terms of ErgoCheck, without telling any secrets, obviously? But
yeah, there's a nice big game plan and dossier in place, and I'd have to shoot you if I showed it to you. So obviously we won't do that. But the beautiful thing about technology, everyone, we're humans, right? So we fear what we don't understand to a large extent, and we can understand that. But the thing about technology, everyone's talking about AI at the minute. Technology is a force for good, it's a force for evil. It can be used either way, and it's in the user. That's the power. So what we have to do is actually understand that we can put this service, this product, which changes people's lives. That's when we get down to it, sitting correctly for your job or otherwise, and being pain-free, or as pain-free as you can, will change your existence. And actually technology, first and foremost, is just a way to get that tangible benefit out to more people. Actually, I've been in the industry now a matter of weeks, and you would be amazed at the amount of people that I have spoken to, and they've gone, I just did not know that even existed. As far as they're concerned, a chair is a chair, but a chair is not a chair, is it? I mean, we're sat down for some of the most important moments of our life, good or bad. I was sat down when my wife told me she was pregnant for the first time. I was sat down when they handed me my son. I was sat down when I had bad news, good news. So we spend so long sitting down, standing up, looking over a desk, perching. It's only fair that if we've got the ability to make people do that, in a better way, then we get the message out. And that's where technology is. It's about the messaging. The days of knocking on doors with leaflets, probably gone.
And one of the other things about technology is that it can help from an accessibility point of view. It can help bridge the gap in terms of difference, if you like.
Yeah.
And it's one of the things that I don't know has necessarily got out there as a story yet within what you do, which is that sense that it can actually help from an inclusion point of view. All right. I just see it in your posts. I know that, that's part of the story, but I think it's something that maybe is kind of missing as part of a wider narrative in terms of ergonomics, full stop, is this area of inclusion, because I still think there's too many people looking for a one size fits all solution and not understanding that and we should all understand that now after the pandemic, right, is that actually we are all different and we do need things that suit us.
100% we do. 100% we do. I mean, all the way down to, the little nuances. We talk about clothing and actually our personal preference on clothing. Actually, it all comes down to the formulation of our experience over our lives, right? There is absolutely no reason why we would assume that anybody on the left of me or the right of me will share the same experience to that point in their life and need the same solution. That's exactly it, Graham. We've just got to understand that inclusion's a big thing now. Even if I look at the tech industry that I've come from, the most viewed piece of content we produced in as an app for 5 years was understanding my colleagues during Ramadan and Eid, and that was the most widely viewed piece of content. People are ready for inclusive communities. They're ready to understand their colleagues, whereas before in years maybe we've tolerated and we've feared what we don't understand again. But people are ready to understand now, and they're ready to be inclusive. And you're right, in ergonomics, that's something we've got to push. Can be a bridge.
Stephen, question?
No, I was thinking it was really interesting what Ben was saying there, because I just wondered, like you were saying about that, about sort of Ramadan and Eid, etc. I wonder if that was that proactive piece of work you were pushing out actually addressed the fact that some people maybe weren't comfortable to ask questions, and therefore people are looking for answers but maybe don't know how to ask the question or are slightly uncomfortable. So that was really interesting, that how well that was received. Clearly people wanted to know more but weren't sure how to maybe approach either getting the information or asking the question.
Yeah, I think you're right, Steve. I think that's a big part of it. We've got, we look at ergonomics, we look at office furniture, specialized or otherwise, and the solutions that are there, desks, mice, keyboards, all these different solutions. And actually the problem largely is that this information, this powerful information, the industry hasn't put it out in a format that's easily accessible. The information's there. I did my digging when I was getting into the industry, but it's the format that it's in.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, and it's one of the reasons we started this, and we've done some fairly disruptive types of content along the way.
You surprised me.
Well, yeah, no, there you go. Over the last summer, we did some content which was like reactive content to stuff on, video content where we were looking at clips from the office and things like that, bringing it back into things that people can understand. And I think half the problem has been that the industry has just put out content which is content for the industry. I don't think this is the only industry that's guilty of that. But this is definitely an industry where it's been like, oh, look what I'm doing. And the rest of the industry goes, yay, well done, you.
It's very self-serving marketing, isn't it? It serves everyone who's in the circle or in the know, but actually what we all need to do is get away from that inner circle, as it were, and it's the end users and the economy and the businesses out there as a wider whole who need to understand it. Us just sort of keeping that a bit like secret squirrel, keeping all that information between us is all very well, but you'll never grow, you'll never get more engagement outside of the same number of people unless you push it beyond the realms of the people who are within that community.
Exactly. We can put a link, any of us can put a LinkedIn post out with terminology that we know is going to be understood by industry peers. And we can probably predict the 5 reactions on LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, and know who they're going to be and when they're going to do it. Well, actually, what's the point? It's a self-perpetuating cycle, exactly as you said, Steve. If we're going to break out, you've got to break out, and you've got to do that with different language, different terminology, different visuals often. And in a format that isn't easily consumed by industry peers. It needs to be a different format.
No, absolutely. One of the things that we've done recently, Ben, on here is we've brought in to this as a program. We've brought in people that don't know anything about ergonomics.
I love it.
Brought in people from different sectors, and very recently we've had quite a number of people from the marketing world. And one of the questions I've got them to answer is, if you could market ergonomics, what would you do? Where is this going wrong? Because people can, when they see it, they go, oh yeah, I get it, I see it, see the benefit, etc. But people aren't doing it. So where's the disconnect? And it's been really interesting to hear some of those answers, hasn't it, Steve, in terms of where we should go. There's nobody in this sector that does anything with influencers. There's nobody in this sector that tries to change the narrative, well, apart from us, maybe. But, that's
present company excluded.
Exactly. But that is the big issue here. We need to be looking around at what the pain points are for people out there. And one of the big things in particular that we've talked about is the term ergonomics itself. All right. And we've had so many people on where we've gone, what do you understand by ergonomic? And we've had some really interesting answers where people have said, oh, I actually assume that that's a bit of a cheap term, because it's been so overused by so many people now that suddenly everything, including my mug, is ergonomic.
But we said, didn't we? We said it's sort of it's evolved from into an adjective, hasn't it? I'm going back to my English classes.
Yeah,
it's basically evolved in a way of describing something. So an ergonomic chair, an ergonomic mug, an ergonomic whatever it would be, where it can't be. It physically cannot be, because that product, will only work for a small number of people. So by definition, using it. But like we said though, Graham, wasn't it? If you go back to when we started the show, when you look at things like when COVID and lockdown and people working from home, there was a big rush to go and buy things for people working from home. And suddenly that word across various websites was just stuck at the front of everything. And to the people who don't know enough about it, and that's no reflection on them, oh, it's got the word ergonomic, right? I'll stick that in the shopping basket.
Well, that was one of the most two of them. That was the funniest thing about some of the reactive commentary we did. We did one episode, Ben, I have to send it to you, where we looked at probably some of the worst chairs on the market.
There's a few out
there. And they were on various shopping sites. And every other word was ergonomic. And it was like a cheap metal chair which folds, which would probably break within 2 minutes. There was nothing ergonomic about it, but
that's the problem, though, and it's success through association, isn't it? Once the human brain has associated a certain relevance to a word, if it sees it enough, then we're going to hit click and we're going to purchase. And unfortunately, those very powerful, shopping channels, as we know, they understand the power of the word, and it's a different word in a different context. But my problem word at the minute, if you like, and you'll get used to me because I do have bugaboos that I try not to tangent too much. My problem word is partnership, right? Because the trouble is, partnership is a word at the minute that, exactly as you said, Steve, it's moved beyond the realm of what it should mean. And everybody on LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram loves the idea of a partnership, but actually they're not. What is that? Let's define it. And ergonomics, exactly that is the same. But we've got to find a way to work back from that. We've got to find a way to give the word a powerful meaning again, and a specific meaning again. But I think that's probably a long battle. I mean, we've got to be aware that, exactly as you said, Stephen, irrelevant, COVID and everything that it brought with it. It was a long period of time, and it changed people's perceptions, and we can't expect them to shift back in 18 months. We've got to be prepared that it's a long battle, but we've got to learn from young companies in in different industries maybe that are doing things correctly, and actually maybe look at startups in different industries. In the tech industry, often we talk about startups, and we'll look and try and identify maybe actually that startup will be successful purely because they are doing things differently. They are going against the grain. They're going rogue. And some startups succeed through attrition with a really good product. And other startups, actually, the bit they do get right is the marketing. So we do have to learn from others.
Can I ask you, Ben, having looked at the industry, do you feel that there's been sort of a lack of regulatory oversight with it as well? Because one of the things that we've seen people just enter into the industry, use that terminology, suddenly say, I'm an expert after 2 minutes and a pint of beer, and away they go. And then suddenly everyone goes, they're an expert in this because they've self-pronounced themselves an expert. Whereas actually, clearly there are people that have done their studies, know what they're talking about. as a company, you deal with professionals who have got qualifications in physiotherapy and things like that, but they can't stand out at the moment from a white boy over here who's just flogging a chair and this person over here who really does know how that this is a medical solution and will change somebody's lives for the better. Where do you think the industry should go on that?
I think you're right that there's probably a grey area in terms of regulatory frameworks that are going to help us define true knowledge and actually perceived knowledge. I think you're right. I think the reality, we come back to that platform, don't we? That's where we've got to use technology, exactly as you say. We can't stand out at the minute because technology gives everyone an instantaneous platform, which is fantastic. I mean, it's the same reason why the three of us are having a good chin wag today, right? Because we can do it really easily, really quickly, and we just go online. But that platform, as it should be, quite rightly, is there for everybody to access. So I guess it's down then to us to go, right, well, everyone's going to get a light shone on them, but it's up to us from a marketing perspective and from a power perspective to give transparency to why this person is being put in front of our lens. That's the reality. And that's a hard thing. And I think regulatory wise, think it'll happen, but I got to be honest, I think we're probably a little way from that in time frame. Yeah. So in the meantime, we've just got to do right. I mean, what's the famous saying? If it's wrong, it's wrong, even if everybody's doing it. And if it's right, it's right, even if nobody's watching you do it. So actually, that's what we've got to do. We've got to be right, be transparent, know that our fact sources are correct, and put those brilliant people up. I mean, I was at the DSE event with the fantastic Guy Osmond and at Alnwick Court not long ago. Couple of weeks, and we've got the people in the room that I am the novice there. I've come from a different sector. In 2 hours with them, and I've soaked up so much. I've got the fantastic Nick Arnold here at Ergo Chair. I mean, I won't blow his horn too much because if he watches this, he won't be able to get through the door with big head. But
he's lost a lot of weight though, so
he has, to be fair. He's done really well, but he has forgotten more about ergonomics than I will probably ever be able to compute. So my mission there is, again, here, from an Ergo Chair lens, I've got someone like Nick. I've got to find a way to put him out to the masses. I've got to find a way to say to everybody, hey, this guy is the real deal. Yeah. He can change your life, and nobody has put him in front of the right lens the right way. So that's what I've got to do, and that's what we've all got to do with our own people that we know, is put them in front of the lens and trust that transparency wins through.
But Graham, do you not think maybe some of this, if you go back to its rawest sort of starting point, is the fact that the whole DSE HSE piece is never fully correctly implemented? It's perceived and worded as guidance, and therefore, what do we hear? People should be having DSE assessments. Is it every year or 2 years? People should be having DSE assessments if they're working at home.
People can't even decide that,
Well, exactly, and that's the problem. What sort of undermines the whole sector is the fact that it isn't actually legislation; it's guidance. And corporation ABC PLC will interpret it one way, and corporation DEF Limited will read it another way, and therefore what you end up is a situation with different companies doing different things for the same group of potentially employees doing the same job. So it's great. This company over here is doing everything. This company's doing nothing, and you've got that huge disparity, haven't you? Then between almost the haves and the have-nots. It's all down to companies' interpretations of what the regulation is and what they do and don't issue their staff to make them become more healthy and productive in their working days.
I think for too long, the whole industry has kind of centered its marketing activity around DSE, though. And I think that's part of the problem. What we know is happening now is that there is a culture change within businesses. Younger CEOs coming into businesses are concerned about health and well-being. One of the main reasons they are concerned about health and well-being, I looked at some stats earlier in the week about this, is because a much higher percentage of CEOs are suffering mental health or physical health conditions themselves. They know the impact it's having on them, and they want to see a change, and then they want that change to be implemented throughout their organization because they understand properly now how that has an impact on productivity. Somehow what we need to do as an industry is really get into that dynamic and say, actually, it doesn't really matter how you do a process, etc. What matters is we need to be proactive in this, not reactive in this anymore. Would you say, Ben?
Yeah, I think you're 100% right. And I won't mention any names to give specifics, but they can be inferred from my job history on LinkedIn if anyone wants to know who I'm talking about. But so in a previous life, I worked for one of the UK's largest private healthcare providers, right? Now, I quickly realised when I was working for them that the best employee wellbeing benefit was 10% off at Zzz's. Right? I mean, that is unfortunately systemic of every industry, and that's private healthcare. That was part of the reason why I founded Wellmi and did it the way I did it, because there had to be a better, quicker, more proactive way. But for years, even after founding Wellmi, I mean, we were knocking on doors of very traditional boards of directors. And as soon as you said the word well-being, they pictured whales, candles, and just, everything, and warm towels. It was nonsense, but exactly that. And they weren't even interested in hearing that you had a technological solution that was going to actually improve their bottom line. They didn't see it. They didn't understand the connection. And to them, it was a superfluous extra that was a nice to have. But you're right, both of you, in what you're saying, and actually the dynamic has changed. And that tick box exercise, yes, to a large percentage, it's still a tick box exercise, but they understand that times are changing. And it's not, by the time they come around to it next time, it will not be a tick box exercise. It is not a nice to have. It is a requirement from both an efficiency and a productivity point of view, from our KPIs, but also it's a requirement if you just want to get on with life, if you just want to be an efficient business. I mean, talent pool as well. Unless you actually, as a business these days, down to LinkedIn recently, most people that are on here watching this, if they manage a LinkedIn business page, will notice that the commitment section came up, asking you to reaffirm your business and your commitments on LinkedIn. Well, if that's not a show, I don't know what is. That actually, unless you publicly show your affirmance to well-being and the health and well-being of your staff, they're not going to want to work for you. Anyone under the age of 25, guess what? They probably look at the employee well-being and the employee benefits before they look at salary. So that says it all, I think. Time to change.
That's a complete sea change compared with how it used to be. And I think that's really where this sector needs to go. It needs to move away from sort of like being preachy about ergonomics and say, well, you like an old school teacher, you've got to stop doing that, because that's going to hurt. And it's got to talk about actually what the benefits are. And also one of the things I've always been keen with, Ben, is I still think there's too many people within the industry. I'd love to hear your take on this, but I still think there's too many people within the industry who just stick to their lane and don't understand this whole holistic well-being piece, because it just used to drive me mad. I'd go and see people and I'd know that I was being sent there to assess them from an ergonomic perspective. But it wouldn't take me long to understand, because I was PAN trained, that actually this person had a specific learning difficulty. This person had a mental health issue. This person, there was something else there that was pervading. And too much of the industry goes, well, that's not my problem. So we're not going to actually help this person fully, And I think I've talked about it loads of times, but I think we have to start getting out of these silos of help.
We do, 100%. It's a kaleidoscope of potential problems, right? I mean, again, we've come across. I've come across people in my previous life and previous businesses where actually, when we talk about the fact that they can't work, they are literally at the point something is crippling them physically or mentally or both, to the point where they cannot function and work despite what they want to. Actually, the nuances of how we've got to look at that, the different facets of what could be going on with them, it's huge. And you're right, we can't stay in our lane. We've got to be prepared and honest enough to actually deviate a bit and actually go, do you know what? I think I know what that is now. And it might not be my bag, but I know someone who can help. and I am going to do the right thing and send that across. And I'm sure, obviously, Stephen, he'll have points on it as well. But I think from my perspective, there's fear again. So we stay in our silo, we stay in the box with which we're most comfortable with. But just because we can't help them, if we can identify someone who can, that's what we've got to do.
It always, I know we've said it a couple of times on this show, Graham, but I always remember that story you told me, and again you've mentioned it, about the lady in the McDonald's. I go again briefly say it, but for Ben's benefit, but that was a really good example of sort of going outside of what was perceived as the realm or the sphere you were working in to identify the problem, wasn't it?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Just to let you know, basically, I was probably about the fourth assessor that had been to see this 19-year-old working in a bank, and every single assessment that had been sent in was an ergonomic assessment, and nobody could come up with a solution. And that's because everybody was looking for an ergonomic solution. And people had made tiny little adjustments, given her this or given her that, etc. But in talking to her, I mean, one of the things was that she was falling asleep at work. She was getting incredibly tired, etc. And I just asked the question. I said, "What's your diet like? What do you eat?" And she said, "I eat McDonald's 3 times a day, every day. I eat one on the way to work. Go back out at lunchtime. I eat one on the way home." So, signposting her then to a dietitian who could analyze her diet, what her blood sugars were like, etc., enabled her to be well again, right? But the trouble is, too many. I saw it all the time. Too many people within that sphere would literally go, "I don't want to ask any question. I don't want to look at this outside of what I'm comfortable with. I don't even want to, say, well, this doesn't look right. There doesn't seem to be anything wrong here that's obvious. Let's ask another question." So I personally think that, better training is required for people that are going out. But I also think, we need to encourage, also within that process as well, I think we need to encourage employees to have more of a dialogue about what's generally going on in their life as well. And I think that's important place for employers to get to, as well as good managers. We should really start to be concerned with, and I think young CEOs are, what's actually keeping you from being as happy in work and out work as you can possibly be. And that outside of work thing's really important. I don't think there's been a generation before that's really cared. As long as you're performing in work, they haven't cared about the outside work bit. But I am seeing a difference there now. I am beginning to see people that are like, what happens at a weekend? What are you okay?
Yeah. I think you're completely right. The trouble is, from a managerial perspective, I think traditionally we've loved to say, it's not just in this country, this is a global problem. But from a managerial top-down perspective, we have loved to say, hey, you have the autonomy to let me know when you have a problem. But guess what? Autonomy is one of those words, right? Autonomy means absolutely nothing when fear is attached to it. Because autonomy and fear, again, not good bedfellows. So saying to someone, you have the autonomy, Graham, and you have it too, Steve, that if something's wrong, I want you to come and let me know. Or even if you just want to chat, I want you to come and let me know. But guess what? If the fear of repercussion is still there, it means nothing. It's fugazi fugazi. It means nothing at all. So we have to say, the autonomy and the right communication channels, and exactly what you said, Graham, to actually training is crucial, but also to let the employees know, come to us, even if it's a question, a broad question or a comment or a feeling or anything. And there are ways to do that, not just apps that I'm involved with. There's loads of different digital solutions to do it and in-person solutions, but they have to have no fear of repercussion. And that's what we've got to address, because in a lot of places that fear is still there, underlying every decision the employee makes about what they say, how they say it, and how long they take to put their hand up at the back of the room and say there's something going on.
And don't you think we want that? And don't you think we're getting there? It's just that it just needs that cultural shift. I mean, you've only got to look at what are the most followed podcasts out there? Who are the most followed podcasts? Who gets the kind of traction in terms of social media? You've got to look at James from Brewdog. You've got to look at Stephen Bartlett, people like that. They are leading by example because they are making themselves vulnerable. They are saying when this goes wrong. They are saying, "Oh, cut today," right? Yeah. And that's important, because when it comes from the top and the top doesn't seem like, this scary, we do it, we're perfect anymore, we are human, then actually that then changes the culture within a business for people going, well, I can put my hand up as well because the boss is saying that they're struggling. Yeah,
100%
that's where
right.
it needs to come from.
You're 100% right. PDFs don't change culture, right? We're culture change agents and transformation change agents. It's been around for decades, but changing business culture goes further than sending out a memorandum or a PDF. You're right. It comes from top down. Previously, we've worked in one of my places. We've actually worked with a load of long haul distance drivers, right? And HGV Class 1 drivers. And the thing that helped them the most, the two things that helped them the most was one, actually, the solfeggio frequencies. Anybody know what they are? So they're audio tracks in certain wavelengths that actually are clinically proven to have an effect on your brain chemistry and calm you down. So what we did was we played them for the long distance drivers when they got stuck in traffic jams, right? We chose what might work and when to do it. That was the first thing we did. And the second thing was give them something that traditionally we said, well, how about giving them Pilates to do while they're driving, little Pilates movements they can do. And the fleet managers said, they're not going to want it. They're not going to want it. Well, guess what? We gave it to them and gave them the autonomy to choose if they wanted it rather than their fleet manager deciding. And we told them that they could enjoy it without anybody knowing they were enjoying it. And guess what? They all did it every single day. Every single day, because they didn't have the fear of repercussion knowing they were doing it, and they chose to do it, and that's what it's all about. But we are getting there, Graham. You're right. We are getting there. There's really good things happening, but we've got to keep pushing the line in everything we do.
I was reading something earlier about sort of going on to a sort of sporting theme around what we've just been discussing there. And again, I know, Graham, it's not necessarily your thing, but Ben, whether you follow golf, but Rory McIlroy last week skipped one of the big tournaments in America, and all the top players are allowed to skip one per season. Otherwise, there's sort of financial implications. And he sort of came out this week saying, look, it was my own mental health and well-being that I actually missed that tournament. So what will be quite interesting to see, based about what you said, Ben, about fear and repercussions, is does he then get hit with a financial penalty or some sort of penalty for actually fronting up and saying, the reason I missed it was this, this, and this, because actually what sort of message does that then send out? And I guess the problem then, the flip side is that then people potentially then start to abuse it, which happens with all sorts of things. But it'd be interesting to see, he's come out and made that call. What's the implication? Does he get fined for being honest and explaining he's missed out on something, or he's chosen to not do something for his own and his family's sort of medium and long-term mental health?
Yeah, it's really interesting. I mean, when you look at golf, obviously we could have a whole podcast where we just talk about the current situation in golf. I'm not lucky enough to play loads. I've got an expensive set of clubs that I've put mud on a couple of times, but I've never actually got any good at it. And I've lost a lot of golf balls. But I mean, we've got Live Golf, haven't we? Which is the huge monetary situation there, and then the PGA. And I think it's probably going to be denoted by actually who tries to take an early moral ground on that and actually come forward and say, for our players, that's not the case. You take the time and you do what you want. But again, that's the same in every business, right? Some organizations will be forward thinking enough to go, like we said, if it's right, it's right, even if no one else is doing it. So stop the knee-jerk reaction in business and organizations, and let's just, if it's right, it's right. Let's do it. Let's do it. Lead by the front, lead by example, and do it early. It'd be interesting to see. The number I saw for a fine that they put out there that he might get was astronomical.
Yeah, I mean, it was. I think it was, and I've seen Andrew Shepherd's commented, and he knows far more about either than I do about golf, putting his hand up for a podcast, but it was some sort of big percentage of this end of season pot, because they do something where they sort of reward people for how much sort of social media activity they've done and what they've generated. And I think there was a talk of a big, was it 50% of what he was entitled to or something? But you then start to think, well, what's the message we're sending out here? Someone's been honest, put their hands up in the public arena, and they get a penalty for it.
And surely whoever's in their marketing department should be looking at that and thinking, actually, the kind of engagement we're going to get on that social media could be far, far better than anything we're going to get about a normal tournament result. So rather than fining him, we should probably be rewarding him. I mean, look at Aldi and the Cuthbert and the Caterpillar thing, and they've taken something that could have been a problem and just turned it into a positive. That's what good marketing strategists do, right? That's what
I think that is actually where we're headed with a lot of things in society, to be honest, is actually turning what people have perceived to be a problem in the first place into something positive. And actually, you know, where people stand up against monetary value on things, I think they will benefit long term anyway. I think that's where we're seeing that everywhere. You know, I do music podcast with a lot of musicians. We constantly talk about the kind of money thing, etc. But actually, you know, where musicians are winning is where they're actually talking about the way that they feel, their mental health, being much more open. You know, years ago, and not that far back, we put all of our music heroes on a pedestal, and it wasn't healthy for any of them, which is why so many of them took their lives, right? We're now seeing a different generation of musicians coming through where they are actually being honest and raw and actually saying, well, you know, I'm fed up at the moment. I'm struggling at the moment with this, etc. And people are, you know, they may lose money out of that in one way, but they will gain long term out of that as well, because people feel genuinely, you know, connected to them in a way that they would never have done before. And I think that is kind of prevailing through the whole of society now, and that is the way that all of us need to sell ergonomics going forward as well. Nice to hear from you from Australia as well. Always good to hear people from the other side of the world. There you go, global show.
I don't know what time it is for you from Australia, but surely you should be up.
It's Friday night. He's obviously been out for a few sherbets and then come in and logged into the show. I mean, why not? Why wouldn't
Quite right.
Yeah. What else should you be doing at quarter to one in Australia on a Friday night, Saturday morning?
Nice to have you with us.
Yeah.
So Ben, it's been great having you on today.
Thank you.
I guess you are excited to go within this industry. Yep.
Yeah, I massively am. I mean, anybody that's watching this and that's industry related. So next week, myself and Nick are actually in Cologne for the big expo into Zoom. Anybody that please connect. I mean, I'm a bit of a Duracell bunny. So if you see me running around like a lunatic and chatting to everybody, just shout coffee or wave one at me. Yeah. Caffeine is the way to get me. But I would love to connect with everybody. I mean, I'm super excited. I feel like this is an industry that a lot of people that should know this is here do not know this is here. And I feel privileged at the fact that I hopefully have a skill set that is going to enable that to happen and expand that kind of exposure. But as an industry as a whole, I've met some great people already. I've met some great characters, and I just think the future is bright for ergonomics. But, you know, that's me, and I'm very much a momentum guy. Before we started this podcast, I said to you, didn't I, both of you, that one of my favorite phrases is movement is life and stagnation is death. Hence why I am go. But I'm excited. It's a fun place. It's a cool industry to be in. And we're going to see what we can do.
The future is bright. You've got to wear shades, as someone once said. Thanks, Ben, for coming on today.
Yeah, really enjoyed it. Thanks, Ben.
No, cheers, guys. I appreciate you having me on.
Folks, if you've enjoyed this, please share with other people. We'd love it if you could share it around your network. There's lots of people that perhaps have never even heard of ergonomics. Lots of people may have never heard of Ben, but do connect with him on whatever social platforms you find him on. And until next time, bye for now. And you can always log into wowergonomics.com to watch this episode and previous ones too. Until next time, bye.